and welcome back to part two of the first segment of Shabbat service for Waymaker Messianic Jewish and Christian Center USA. This is Shabbat service for April 24th, 2021 on the Gregorian calendar, and it is IR 125781 on the Hebrew calendar. And as we're counting Omer, it is day 21. Um, I'm taking a chance because I'm actually uploading these on a paid upload program, and they're telling me that there's no time limit. I haven't never gone this far, so I am keeping my. We're gonna we're gonna pray that this 34 minutes of the first part is going to be uploaded to the YouTube channel. So um, this is the first time I'm going to give that a try. But anyway, we're going to continue on and do a recap of Acharei Mot, and the translation for that is after the death. And of course, that was meaning after the deaths of Aaron's older sons, Nadab and Abihu, um, because they introduced strange fire, and Adonai struck them dead. There was instructions for Yom Kippur, or the Day of Atonement. We began this Torah portion, and this is the service that it was in the tabernacle. It forbade slaughtering animals outside of the offerings, the actual offerings to be outside of the tabernacle, and also forbade the consumption of blood. This segment also lists a series of forbidden relationships and other abominations condemned by God, and emphasizes the holiness of the land of Israel. So we start out with the Yom Kippur service, and God told Moses to relate to Aaron and his surviving two sons that they are not to enter the House of Holies, separated from the rest of the tabernacle by a curtain, except on the Day of Atonement, on Yom Kippur, dressed in white linen garments. They would don themselves after they immerse themselves in water. The high priest is to do the sin offering of the young bull and a ram as an elevation offering on his own behalf, and the two goats as a sin offering, and the ram as an elevation offering for the people. And we went through all of that. We had the goat that is sacrificed for Adonai, and then the scapegoat that is actually the iniquities are put onto that scapegoat and sent out into the wilderness. And so Yom Kippur was addressed in this segment of this parashat, this Torah portion. And then also it continues in chapter 17 of Leviticus, the tabernacle and blood. Um, Although God permits his people to eat meat, he instructs the people, however, to not ever eat blood. And if you're going to eat meat, that the blood of the animal must be completely drained. That is just totally forbidden, because the life force of that creature is the blood. So, and that is so highly important. And then, of course, as we mentioned, there were abominations and the holiness of the land, um, that, and these included adultery, incest, bestiality, um, actually lying with a woman in her time of separation, marrying two sisters, um, forbidding passing a child to Molech, which the sages defined as a form of idolatry, and so on and so forth. Um, so this is what we just have covered. Very, very important. And these things God has not changed his mind on. Um, God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. So again, this Torah portion deals with Yom Kippur, which is the Day of Atonement, a very holy day. Plus, it also deals with the purity in the land. So the introductory verse is, "You shall not do as they do in the land of Egypt where you lived, and you shall not do as they do in the land of Canaan, to which I am bringing you. You shall not walk in their statutes." But Adonai wanted B'nai Israel to follow his statutes. And following this introductory verse is a list of what he did not want them to do, including ancestral relationships that are forbidden. Included as well are the prohibitions against homosexuality, the prohibition against human sacrifice to Moloch. That was very clear, and Adonai called it an abomination, and he has not changed his mind on this. And also address proper and improper behavior. He was addressing morality with the children of Israel, and setting that standard for them. It's an instruction against evil influences. It is these deeds that they encountered in Egypt and, of course, would encounter in Canaan. And he warned them that, he was going to drive those people out of the land and the land would vomit them out. And if they participated in that, well, then the land would do the same to them because he did not want his people to behave that way. Um, so, the land itself was affected by the abominations, the Lord said, and if unable to tolerate the presence of the nations who so defile them and the land, that there was a physical reaction by the land itself. Um, so God admonishes his people, B'nai Israel, not to do the same as the others that were not his before it. For if they did that, it would happen to them as well. So, as we know in history, that Bnei Israel did get into these abominations, and did, they did idolatry. They passed their children through the fire. You named it, and what it ended into was the first temple ended up being destroyed. They were carried into captivity. There were harbingers. God gave them warning after warning through the prophets, and they didn't listen. So that is there was a consequence to all of that. So that is the end of that Torah portion. We're going to get into the next Torah portion, the second one for this week, um, and that is Parashat Kedoshim. And this starts with chapter 19 and ends with chapter 20. So the holiness code. Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to all the congregation of Bnei Israel and tell them, you shall be Kedoshim, for I, Adonai, your God, am holy." And the word Kedoshim means saints or holy ones. So they are to be holy as God is holy, as Adonai is holy. Each one of you is to respect his mother and father and keep my Shabbatot. I am Adonai, your God. Do not turn to idols or make molten gods for yourself. I am Adonai, your God. When you bring a sacrifice of fellowship offerings to Adonai, you are to offer it so that you may be accepted. It is to be eaten the same day you offer it, and the next day. But if anything remains until the third day, it is to be burned with fire. If it is eaten at all on the third day, it is disgusting. It will not be accepted. Rather, anyone who eats it will bear his iniquity, since he has profaned what is holy to Adonai, and that soul will be cut off from his people. When you reap the harvest of your land, you are not to reap to the very corners of your field, nor are you to gather the gleanings of your harvest. You are not to pick the remnants of your vineyard, nor are you to gather the fallen grapes of your vineyard. Instead, you are to leave them for the poor and for the outsider. I am Adonai your God. And as we get into the feast of Shabbat, we're going to be reading the book of Ruth, and you're going to see that also demonstrated in that book. You are not to steal. You are not to lie. You are not to deceive one another. Boy, look at the world we live in today. So much deception continuously. You are not to swear by my name falsely and so profane the name of your God. I am Adonai. You are not to oppress your neighbor, nor rob him. The wages of a hired servant are not to remain with you all night until the morning. You are not to curse the deaf, nor put a stumbling block before the blind, but you shall fear your God. I am Adonai. You are to do no injustice in judgment. You are not to be partial toward the poor, nor show favoritism toward the great, but you are to judge your neighbor with fairness. You are not to go up and down as a talebearer among your people. You are not to endanger the life of your neighbor. I am Adonai. You are not to hate your brother in your heart. Instead, you are to firmly rebuke your neighbor and not bear sin because of him. You are not to take vengeance nor bear any grudge against the children of your people, but love your neighbor as yourself. I am Adonai. You must keep my statutes. You are not to crossbreed different kinds of animals, so no hybrids. You are not to sow your field with two kinds of seed, nor are you to wear a garment woven of two kinds of material. If a man lies sexually with a woman who is a slave girl pledged to be married to another man, but not ransomed or given her freedom, they are both to be punished, but they are not to be put to death because she was not free. She is to bring his trespass offering to Adonai to the entrance of the tent of meeting, a ram for a guilt offering. The Kohen is to make atonement for him with a ram of the trespass offering before Adonai for his son that he committed, and the sin that he committed will be forgiven him. When you come into the land and have planted all kinds of trees for food, and you are to cons- consider their fruit as forbidden, 3 years it will be forbidden to you. It is not to be eaten. Then in the fourth year, all its fruit will be holy for giving praise to Adonai. In the fifth year, you may eat its fruit, so it will yield its increase to you. I am Adonai your God. You are not to eat any meat with the blood still in it, nor are you to use enchantments or practice sorcery. You are not to round off the hair on the sides of your heads, nor are you to mar the edge of your beard. You are not to make any cuttings in your flesh for the dead or make any tattoo marks upon yourself. I am Adonai. Do not defile your daughter to make her a prostitute, so that the land does not fall into prostitution and become full of wickedness. You are to keep my Shabbatot and reverence my sanctuary. I am Adonai. Do not turn to those who are mediums or to soothsayers. Do not seek them out to be defiled by them. I am Adonai your God. You are to rise up in the presence of the gray-haired and honor the presence of the elderly, so you will fear your God. I am Adonai. If an outsider dwells with you in your land, you should do him no wrong. The outsider dwelling among you shall be to you as the native born among you. You shall love him as yourself, for you dwelled as outsiders in the land of Egypt. I am Adonai your God. You must not be dishonest in judgment, in measurements of length, weight, or quantity. You are to have honest balances, honest weights, honest bushel measure, and an honest gallon. I am Adonai your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt. You must observe all my statutes and all my ordinances, do them. I am Adonai. So he's teaching them honesty, morality, how to live peaceably with one another and honorably with one another. And the last segment of this Torah portion deals with idols and the occult. Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, Moreover, you are to tell Bnei Israel, anyone from Bnei Israel, from the outsiders dwelling in Israel, who gives any of his children to Molech, shall surely be put to death. The people of the land are to stone him with rocks. I also will set my face against such a person and will cut him off from among his people. So, and this is modern day abortion, is what we can look at it today. And we can't condone this at all as believers. I will cut him off from among his people because he has given his children to Moloch. And what he's talking about is they were passed through the fire as a sacrifice to this god called Moloch, this false deity, this little g god that doesn't speak to anybody. Because we know there's one true living God, and that's the Creator God, our Father in heaven. Because he has given his children to Moloch, defiling my sanctuary and profaning my holy name. But if the people of the land all hide their eyes from that person when he gives of his seed to Molech, and do not put him to death, then I will set my face against that man and against his family, and will cut him off, along with all who play the prostitute after him with Moloch from among their people. So we cannot turn a blind eye to what God does not want to be done. And yes, we must speak out against what is an abomination to God. Um, and he's saying it very clearly here. The soul that turns to mediums or to soothsayers, prostituting himself with them, I will set my face against that soul and will cut him off from among his people. So consecrate yourselves and be holy, for I am Adonai your God. You are to keep my statutes and do them. I am Adonai who sanctifies you. Any man who curses his father or his mother shall surely be put to death. He has cursed his father or mother, and his blood shall be on him. The man who commits adultery with another man's wife, who commits adultery with his friend's wife, both the adulterer and the adulteress shall surely be put to death. If a man lies with his father's wife and has uncovered his father's nakedness, both of them shall surely be put to death, and their blood shall be on them. If a man lies with his daughter-in-law, both of them shall surely be put to death. They have committed a perversion, and their blood shall be on them. If a man lies with a male as with a woman, both of them have committed an abomination, and they shall surely be put to death. Their blood shall be on them. If a man takes a wife and her mother, it is wickedness. They shall surely be burned with fire, both he and they, so that they may be may be no wickedness among you. If a man lies with an animal, he shall surely be put to death, and you are to kill the animal. If a woman approaches any animal and lies down with it, you are to kill the woman and the animal. They shall surely be put to death, and their blood shall be on them. If a man takes his sister, his father's daughter, or his mother's daughter, and sees her nakedness, and she his, it is a shameful thing. They are to be cut off in the sight of the children of their people, for he has uncovered his sister's nakedness, and he will bear his iniquity. If a man lies with a woman during her nida and exposes her nakedness, he has exposed her flow, and she has uncovered the flow of her blood. Both of them are to be cut off from among their people. You are not to uncover the nakedness of your mother's sister or your father's sister, for the one who does that made his close relative naked and will bear his iniquity. If a man lies with his aunt, he has uncovered his uncle's nakedness. They shall surely bear their sin and die childless. If a man takes his brother's wife, it is an impurity. He has uncovered his brother's nakedness, and they will be childless. Now you are to keep all my statutes and all my ordinances, and do them, so that the land where I am bringing you to dwell will not vomit you out. You are not to walk in the ways of the nation which I am casting out before you, for they did all these things, and therefore I abhorred them. But I have said to you, you will inherit their land, and I will give it to you to possess it, a land flowing with milk and honey. I am Adonai your God, who has set you apart from the peoples. Also, you are to make a distinction between the clean animal and the unclean, and between the unclean bird and the clean. And you are not to make your souls detestable by an animal or by a bird or by anything with which the ground teems, which I have set apart as unclean for you. You are to be holy to me, for I, Adonai, am holy, and have set you apart from the peoples, so that you would be mine. A man or a woman who is a medium or is a soothsayer shall surely be put to death. They shall stone them with rocks, and their blood shall be on them. So we've come we don't stone people today, but it is still an abomination to Adonai. It is a sin, and because God does not change his mind on those things. However, we're not doing those things that were done in ancient days. So I'm going to actually recap this section, and then we will get into the Haftorah. So this section continues to go on to the moral and the ritual laws that were designed to increase the holiness of the nation, as well as the punishments for the transgressions that were mentioned in the earlier Parashat in Acharei Mot. Holiness begins with the exhortation to be holy as Adonai is holy. Um, that is how this Torah section had begun. And it is the social law, what is socially acceptable, and what Adonai is saying is socially acceptable. If you look at our world today, it would not be socially acceptable to Adonai what is being done. Um, and so all these immoralities are addressed because Adonai never wanted, and he still does not want his people to behave in those manners. But also, the other thing that was brought out is loving your neighbor as yourself. That is the second greatest commandment. And Yeshua says that when he is asked what is God's greatest commandment, and he speaks of the Shema, and then he says, "And you shall love your neighbor as yourself," and that's the second commandment. And on these two commandments hangs the Torah. So it's very important. Um, all of the things that were unholy to God, and what is to happen to those that are engaging in the abominations of God are addressed here. They were pretty self-explanatory to the day, and they were carried out exactly that way um, in that time, in biblical days. What it is was unholy to God, to Adonai back then, is still unholy to God. God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. That part is not going to change. People want to rationalize and say, "Well, that's the Old Testament." No, God doesn't change. If he thought it was unholy and it was an abomination to him back then, he still does. Uh, you can be guaranteed of that, and that's a fact. That you know and when Yeshua came, he did not come to change the law, but he came to fulfill it. So he did not say, "Well, no, that's not so, and I'm changing this now." No, he didn't say that. In fact, he went in. He actually took some of these things and went deeper. Even if you had a thought of anger, that you could consider yourself like you've slain the person, for instance. So these things still apply today. However, we don't stone people. That is just not something that we do. But we need to be holy to God. We need to know the heart of our Father and know what is an abomination to Him. I mean, if you love the Lord your God with all your heart, you want to please Him as well, and keep what He is telling you to do. You don't want to do what is displeasing to Him. And some of the things that he was stating to B'nai Israel as being moralistic should be in everyone's hearts. But of course, we live in a world right now where things that are morally wrong are being said they're right. It's just so upside down. People are so confused, and they really need to get saved and find the Lord and get right with God while there is still time. So this is the end of the Torah portion. We are going to get into the Haftarah portion. I am going to actually pause this. We are going to come back with part 3.